Am I allowed to start, or someone need to give me the wink? Okay. Assalamu alaikum, everybody. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين له الحمد الحسن والثناء الجميل وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله الملك الحق المبين وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله المبعوث رحمة للعالمين. We begin in the name of Allah, the most merciful, the granter of mercy. All praise and glory belongs to Allah, Lord of the worlds. Certainly Allah is deserving of the best thanks and the most beautiful praises. And we testify that no one is worthy of our worship and our devotion but Allah and Allah alone without any partners, the true Supreme King. That the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam was certainly his prophet and his servant and his messenger, whom Allah Azza wa Jal sent as a mercy to the worlds. After welcoming everybody, the topic, as you know, is the rising tide, trend, appeal of atheism. And it's no secret that inside and outside the Muslim community, atheism, or the atheistic lifestyle, right? The godless, or the lifestyle, or the worldview that does not believe in God, certainly has traction today that it has never really had before in, as far as we know, all of recorded human history. Why? Why is it so appealing? In a study, it was the inaugural study, published by the Yaqeen Institute's research team. They studied the pathways to doubt and why people doubt religion in general, and belief in God was a part of that. Why do they doubt their belief in God and walk away from religion and God? And to summarize, the 20 to 30 pathways and reasons people have for leaving the faith or doubting the faith, these can be summarized into two major reasons. The first of them is emotional reasons. The second of them are intellectual reasons. So emotional reasons like what? Like feeling a sense of resentment from their religious experience, or feeling a sense of convenience that they get from leaving their religion because of the societal pressure that's around following a religion, let alone Islam, in these times. That's the emotional reasons. The intellectual reasons, they are justifications that people give, such as this being the scientific option, right? This is the official position of the scientific community, supposedly. Atheism is supposedly the scientific position, or the only logical position, whereas no religion can contend with the scientific and logical proofs for atheism. But what I want to point out is that it's usually not an emotional reason or an intellectual reason for people to become atheists. It's an emotional reason and an intellectual reason for people to become atheists. It's a combination of both. And let me give you an example to illustrate that. The example of the average Muslim kid who wants to leave Islam and become atheist. Okay? There's usually a backstory to that point, right? That crossroad. That Muslim kid is usually born to a Muslim family, and they are a first-generation Muslim American, meaning their parents immigrated to this country and they were the first generation born in this country. Their dad probably left, or their parents probably left the Muslim majority country looking for a better tomorrow for their kids, for their family. But then when they got here, they got so consumed in building a better tomorrow for their family that they overlooked what was happening right under their nose here and now today. They were veiled from today by tomorrow, okay? And so what was happening under this veil that the parents many a times don't notice? The child was feeling very disadvantaged because of the parents' financial situation, even if the parents aren't poor, by the way. But the parents, because they're immigrants, and so they're working much harder for their money, right? They feel like they're one step behind, so they're going to compensate. So they know the value of money more than the next guy who just had it like that generation upon generation. So the perspective of their parents on finances, to begin with, disadvantage that kid in the eyes of the kid. Like, my parents don't want me to have a brand new pair of sneakers every 3 months the way every other kid has, because they know the value of hard-earned money, right? Also, they felt disadvantaged because of the value system of their parents, whether it's cultural or Islamic or a mix of cultural and Islamic. The values of their parents are very different from the values that he sees growing up. So his parents will not let him, for example, date and go to prom because our values don't agree with that stuff, right? So no new Jordans every 3 months, and no dating and no prom. This makes the kid feel like the oddball out among all of his friends. And so the kid gets picked on. He gets weird looks, he gets weird comments, and he's constantly dealing with being a misfit in his crowd. What does that feeling do? That feeling increases his desperation, his thirst to want to fit in more and more, right? It makes them want to fit in more and more. Press pause on that for a second. That's the emotional front. The educational front, what's getting pumped into this child's mind? On the educational front, they go through 12 years of primary schooling, secondary schooling, high schooling, and then they go to college. All of it drilling into you the very same concepts. Concepts like what? Human evolution, right? The greatness of Western civilization in terms of its literature, its discoveries, its inventions, all of this. And then compare that with his Islamic education, by the way. The average of the best case scenarios among our kids, the average of the best, meaning the masjid goer kids, which are not the majority, by the way. The average of the best group of kids, they have a what? A Sunday school equivalent of an Islamic education, right? Not something very intellectually stimulating, satisfying, engaging, none of that stuff. Compelling, no way. Many of our average Sunday school kids will graduate Sunday school, whenever that happens, whenever they tell their parents, no, I'm not going back, right? Having not understood the meaning of Al-Fatiha. They don't know the meanings of Qul Huwa Allahu Ahad. They don't even know how to identify the God that they worship, right? God is one. That's what we Muslims believe, is it? Right? So many a times it is that superficial, their Islamic education. So this is what their public and primary education looks like, and this is what their Islamic education looks like. Nothing intellectual, nothing satisfying, nothing rational, nothing scientific, nothing intellectually, convincing, nothing. And so the outcome of this whole mess is what? The emotional problem, the imbalance between I'm getting from this education versus that education. By high school or college, this Muslim kid is thinking, I have a very good, intelligent reason to be an atheist. Like, why shouldn't I be an atheist? There's like no good reason to believe this. I have very legitimate reason to walk away from it, right? Science, logic, all this stuff, Western civilization. At the same time, by the way, my parents don't really practice that much, so they probably don't believe in it so much either. They practice when they want to practice. So that feeds into his leaning away from religion. And so why should I stay on this religion that restricts me so much, has so many rules, in the age of like opportunities, right? And so that's where they come from. It's no surprise. It's not a riddle why they would leave Islam. Why would they choose atheism? They've never experienced, tasted the faith themselves, never had an opportunity to. They have no sort of intellectual immunity to the ideas that they're going to encounter, right? They didn't really feel necessarily in their religious community, in their local masjid, on average, a sense of community, a sense of belonging, because that's huge, by the way. That's huge. Didn't Allah Azza wa Jal say, وَقَالَ إِنَّمَا اتَّخَذْتُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَوْثَانًا مَوَدَّةَ بَيْنِكُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he called them out, he said to them, the only reason you guys are staying worshipping these idol statues thingies is because of the warmth between you in this world. Like you're doing it for social reasons. For the warmth of fraternity, the warmth of social bonds. So he didn't even have that. No experience of the faith, no intellectual immunity, no sense of belonging and community, a place where he can feel safe being the weirdo that he is outside. None of this is there. And so it is like perfectly obvious and expected that so many of our youth, sometimes even our young adults, would say at that point, Yeah, like, why do we believe it's truth? Why do we have to believe this is true? And so they would accept now to repeat certain things. Like, yeah, there's no such thing as absolute truth. Yeah, right? The relativity of truth, they call it. Which is absolutely ridiculous, but it doesn't have to be smart. So long as it's convenient, so long as it puts out the fires inside me, right? Because the idea of there not being an absolute truth, why would anyone repeat that? It makes absolutely zero sense, doesn't it? When you say there's no such thing as absolute truth, what you mean is the truth is there's no such thing as truth, or else why are you saying it? Yes? You're asserting a truth. What is that truth? That there's no truth. So the contradiction in that statement is very obvious, but it doesn't have to be something smart, it just has to be something useful. And so they begin to parrot these things. They're conditioned into thinking they're open-minded. Yeah, man, why should I stay on religion? Conditioned into thinking he's open-minded. But in reality, all they're doing is they're parroting the dominant narrative, the popular narrative. Now I want to move on to the second part of my talk, which is, where does this narrative come from? Where does it come from? This idea there's no such thing as absolute truth, that no religions are true, that there's no proof that God exists. That's the dominant narrative. The pressure makes them accept it. And I explained to you where this pressure builds up from. Where did it come from? Because knowing where it come from helps you a great deal in resisting it. Helps you a great deal in resisting it. Why do most people in the United States and much of the Western world believe that religion stinks? Why? Because in the Western world, for the past 400 years, things have been going pretty well. Yes? We have to understand the context that we live in. They've seen advancement, they've seen sophistication, they've seen pain management in medicine improve, they've seen overall life expectancy and quality of life in general on the material level improve a great deal. When did it start improving in the modern world, in today's world? No, past 400 years. But what event happened in the past 400 years? They walked away from their religion. That's when they broke away from they ripped off the blindfolds of the church. Okay? And so in their experience, the way they understand it, this is the roots of the civilization you live in, you must understand to know the difference between you and them. And it's not always a you and them. We are one with them in many respects. I just mean religiously speaking, right? Right now. You and many of them. The day they walked away from their religion, the religion that held them back was the day they were able to move forward. Understand? The modern world was developed. The initiation, the beginning, the launch pad of developing the modern world, finally climbing out of the dark ages, was what? You walking away from religion. So to them, religion is just like some baseless, factless superstition that held us back and is not a harmless fantasy. It's a very dangerous fantasy to believe in this religion stuff. Because when we used to believe in this religion stuff, things were all wrong. Is that clear? Everything was going wrong, was going haywire. Medically, ethically, politically, everything was going wrong. We were held back by this system. And so basically, they have PTSD. What's PTSD? What's PTSD, guys? This guy he's doing a face palm like Sheikh. He's asking PTSD in Masjid Hamza. He's insane. Is that why? Huh? I apologize. I'm not trying to show off with terms. I'm just trying to keep it light here. It's very hard to have this conversation in a masjid and in an MSA with the exact same language. So I'm going to have to try to put in fillers to humanize myself and not look arrogant, okay? I'm not trying to flex on anyone, I swear. But if you don't speak in the language of the youth in university, sometimes they assume that you're just being, dogmatic, right? You don't understand what you're saying to begin with. You're just repeating the same way you're accusing us of repeating things we don't understand. Anyway, so what's PTSD? MashaAllah. There must be a therapist in this community making mad money right now. I hope you're not. May Allah alleviate all those who are struggling with mental health and any sort of health challenges. Allahumma ameen. PTSD is basically called post-traumatic stress disorder. Trauma. When you have trauma from something, okay, mental anguish, trauma. The Western world, in large part, is traumatized from their religion. When you're traumatized by something, you overreact to it because you're too sensitive to it. You overreact to it. Okay? And that is why they are resistant to any form of religion. Because religion, their religion, hurt them so much. And so they believe we must do away with all the religions. That is the concept of the secular age. Secular means section off religion in a tight corner called 1 hour on Sunday. That's what it means, right? It should not show up in public life. And so, like, I don't need to tell you the history, but, like, the French Revolution started all the revolutions all over Europe, right? We in the United States here, we're an extension of that. Those calls for liberation. The motto, the chant of the French Revolution was, man will never be free until we strangle the last king with the intestines, the entrails of the last priest. Like, these two guys tricked us. We got to kill all these priests and take their intestines and choke out all the kings because they did a number on us. They did a tandem on us. And then, like, 100 years later, like, when atheism started actually becoming a system, a full-blown codified system, a religion. When atheism started becoming a religion 150 years ago, Karl Marx said what? In his Communist Manifesto, when he threw religion to the wind. He's not the only one. Obviously, Nietzsche said God is dead, A'udhu Billah, and all these crazy things. But Karl Marx said religion is the sigh of the suffering, the opium of the masses. Religion is just this thing that helps you sigh, like a release, and just vent, and you believe this made-up story just to feel better. And it is the opium of the masses, the way to drug people into accepting your government. So he started he would, was a big advocate for atheism. And then again, the philosophers continue to say many ugly things. Glorified is our Lord above the insults they attribute to him, subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nietzsche said what he said. Thomas Arnold published a poem called God is God's Funeral. Wal-'iyadhu billah. This became a dominant culture over 100 years ago. You need to understand where it came from. Okay? Good. So when you come across people now who say, all religions are man-made, that's called what? Throwing out the baby with the bathwater, right? You instead of like figuring out what's the true religion, you've lost hope that you could find the true religion. You've lost hope you can clean the baby without, getting rid of the baby. So you just throw out the baby with the bathwater. That's what the concept, the expression comes from. And by the way, I always stop and tell the youth, if anyone ever tells you all religions are man-made, you must never swallow that. If you can't say it to them, say it to yourself, how arrogant this person is. How many religions have they studied to say all religions are man-made? Many a times the people that say this have not studied a single religion significantly. It may even be your sociology professor. It may be your biology professor. It may be a professor in religion, in an aspect of a religion. The history of Judaism, right? The philosophy of Trinitarian theology, right? So don't accept from anyone to ever say that. But when they do say that, I want you just to notice the trauma. Trauma. All religions are, when you're traumatized, when you're contemptful, when you're angry, when you get into a fight with your spouse, right? What do you say? Even the Prophet ﷺ warned us against saying that regarding spouses. Always and never. You always do this. You never do that. Always and never. Those are signs of what? Of you being in an emotional state that does not enable you to be just and fair. Right? So that's what they're doing. They're saying religions have always been man-made conventions, man-made constructs. Okay. So when someone tells you all religions are man-made, you should be able to tell them, of course you need to know before you ask them, what do you know about Islam? What do you know about the history of Islam? What do you know about the accomplishments of Islam? And if you don't know these things, you need to not just blame it on yourself or your sheikh or your Sunday school. You are responsible to a great extent for yourself, aren't you? More than anyone else is. You're adults here. Pick up a book, read, understand. Your fate, your potential fate, even if you don't believe, your outcome, your destiny, is all based on this. It can't just be like something I asked the Sheikh and he gave me a lousy answer. You know? I looked it up on Google and it said Islam was a religion made to worship the moon god that existed in Mecca 1400 years ago. What more do I need to know? It should mean more to you than that. Pick up a book like, I don't know. I don't read much in English. Lost Islamic History is a good book. Faras al-Khatib from the UK. Pick up the book of Abu Hassan Nadawi, rahimahullah. The book, I forget what it's called in English. I read it in Arabic. Huh? Is it called Islam in the World? That's the English title? Title is so much cooler in Arabic, by the way. Just to let you know. I think it's called like The Rise and Fall of Islam. In Arabic, it's actually called What the World Lost by the Collapse of Islam. Because that's what the book is really about. Anyway, so you ask these people these things because you need to separate in your head, and whether you do this with others or not is secondary, but at least in your head, that Islam is not like the other religions, right? We as Muslims even have had a completely different religious experience than other civilizations. Like our golden age was when we left our religion? No, that's when our golden age ended. It's the opposite of others, right? Our downfall happened when? When we started practicing Islam? No, when we lost so much of our understanding of Islam and our observance of Islam that our downfall happened. It's the exact opposite of them, right? The others, in them, I don't mean in the absolute sense. I'm not going to keep making that disclaimer. Okay, good. That was the second part. Where this dominant narrative comes from, you need to know where it comes from so that you understand the medical history of the patient in front of you. Okay? Good. The last thing, which I want to spend... How long have I been talking? 10 o'clock? I can end at 10? You guys are not going anywhere? You never tell a sheikh keep going. It's just like you're going to miss Fajr. Anyway, the last point, I'll be done in before 9:30. 9:25 I'll be finished, inshallah. Let's talk about God existing. Atheism itself. Is there proof for God existing? There's many ways you can answer this, but there's a particular way that I like to answer. Is there proof for God existing? First of all, yes, there is absolutely. There is proof. Our religion teaches us to not be dismissive of our mind and our ability to understand, our ability to evaluate. The issue of blind faith in Islam, blind faith, faith without evidence, is not something Islam endorses. That's not our religion. But the problem is, when people say, is there proof for God's existence, they are demanding a very specific kind of proof, and that is scientific proof. That's a problem. Because we're not saying blind faith, we're saying there's proof. But we are saying, who said that scientific proof is the only kind of proof? Okay? People demanding scientific proof is part of the dominant culture. Like when you lost all trust in religion for information, for facts, right? As a culture, you became overly reliant, overly trusting on what did in fact give us facts, which is science, right? For sure, science delivers us to useful discoveries, right or wrong. Like, we're not dismissing science. We're dismissing, we're critiquing, we're pushing back against being overly dependent on science. Make sure you always make that disclaimer with people. Say, oh, you religious people, you're always against science. We're not against science. We're against you not noticing the limitations of science. You assuming science is the by-all, end-all. That is the issue. So let me explain further. You cannot possibly ask for scientific proof for God's existence, because science is very limited in what? Number one, science only covers the observable realm. Only covers what you can see, right? Like the hadr, the present, the physical tangible world, they call it, right? If it's not physical, you can't prove it with science. Like someone says, I want scientific proof. Asadullah, our good researcher with us at Yaqeen Institute, he likes to tell people when they say, it has to be scientific proof. I only accept science. He says, well, can you give me scientific proof that love exists? Can you give me like a peer-reviewed scientific journal to prove that love exists? You believe that love exists, don't you? They say, yes, of course. Give me scientific proof that love exists. Why can't you scientifically prove that love exists? Because love is not part of the physical world, tangible world, which is only what science covers. Can you prove to me that human rights exist? I don't believe human rights exists. Give me scientific proof. Right? Can you prove to me justice exists? Give me scientific proof. That's the idea. You know, back when there was the space race between the US and Russia, and of course Russia was communist at the time, or climbing out of it, there's a famous story of one of the astronauts that went into outer space from the Russian crew, space crew, and he says, I am out here and we have made it into the, beyond the Earth's atmosphere, and there is no one up here. I have confirmed there is no God. See, nothing here, stuff. And this is just like comical. This is ludicrous. This is like stupidity. Because who said that God can be seen beyond the atmosphere of planet Earth? We said God cannot be seen by human beings in this life. That's what we said. Right? We said God is ghaib. Ghaib means unseen. Right? You know, Mufti Menk, may Allah protect him and preserve him, he has a funny joke about this. I think it was him who made the joke. He said the guy says, I'm up here and there is no God. I don't see a God. Therefore, we've confirmed there is no God. So he said to him, no, you will see him. You just wait till your oxygen runs out. That's the idea. So long as you're alive, here now, breathing in this life, it's not about the advancement of technology. It's not about, telescopes or spaceships. It's beyond the seeable realms of this world. The second limitation of science that we should be very aware of is that who said science can ever deliver us to absolute truths, to any facts, even in the physical world? Because what do we mean by that? We said science does give us good discoveries. Yeah, it tells us what's most likely true until it gets disproven. Science is always getting disproven, right? So many facts turn out to be disproven and replaced with new facts. We're not saying dismiss those facts, but we want to say recognize they're not absolute facts. They can be disproven according to the definition of science, right? We have not observed otherwise. So basically, we are limited always by science. By what? By what we've observed, what we've seen so far, right? And what we've seen and what we will see will always be less than what we will never see. وَمَا أُوتِيتُ مِنَ الْعِلْمِ إِلَّا قَلِيلًا. You have not been given of knowledge, but little. There is a joke also that I once heard Noam Chomsky make. Funny guy, very smart. Depends on, what your background is. You may or may not like him. He's a little bit of like an anarchist when it comes to economy. But they asked him, what is your opinion on science? They asked him about a lot of things because he's a very big reader and very intelligent. He said, they asked him, what do you think of science? He said, I think science is like the story of the man under the street lamp. They say there was a man under a street lamp, lamps in the streets outside, tall lamps, sidewalks, looking around in the ground. And they told him, what are you doing? He said, I'm looking for my keys. They said, where did you drop your keys? He said, I dropped them across the street. They said, then why are you looking here? He said, because the lights are on here. You understand the joke? It's not a ha-ha joke, but it's a joke, right? That's the idea, the silliness of it. I have no choice but to look where the lights are on. Same as the human being, right? We, even scientifically speaking, by the way, we can only see so many strands of the light spectrum with our naked eye. Technology has advanced, enabled us to see a little bit more, like through X-ray, gamma ray, a few more. But how do we know there aren't a gazillion more that we will never, until this world ends, have access to? See things through different dimensions, through different access points to different wavelengths of light. How do we know? وَمَنْ لَمْ يَجْعَلِ اللَّهُ لَهُ نُورًا فَمَا لَهُ مِنْ نُورٍ. Whoever Allah does not grant a light to will not have any light. Right? Sure, that applies to the light of guidance before anything else. Right? That this certainly is true about anything. Whatever Allah doesn't grant, you don't have. Okay, so science is a problem because it only covers the tangible world, right? It's a problem because it's so limited. We don't know what we don't know until we figure out that we didn't know. Yes? The last thing is, science is not as fair as people think. Like, people act like, I believe in science because science is not like subject to emotion. Science is pure research. Science is pure fact. It's like, hold up. What do you mean pure research and pure fact? Did I just say hold up? See, I'm still a New Yorker. Even if I go to Allentown, I'm still a New Yorker. Sorry, I apologize. Sometimes these things slip. Hold on. The issue of science being objective, meaning perfectly fair, it doesn't change from person to person. Who said? People are the ones who perform scientific experiments. People are unfair. Can't I perform some science, and if I don't find my results, I should throw it under the rug and do another experiment till that one suits me, and so that's the one that I publish? Right? Which is another funny part of this whole discussion, that most people that quote science have not performed it themselves. They got it from a guy who got it from a guy who got it from a guy who got it from a book. And we don't know how trustworthy this person is. And then they make fun of people who say we depend on the science of hadith to tell us who said that the Prophet said, alayhi salatu wassalam. You didn't perform the science yourself, right or wrong. You're trusting the narration, the testimony of someone. That someone, you don't know who he is. And that's why many a times, by the way, people quote science, and also, by the way, like when we debate with them, also using our texts, we don't really know our texts too well. This is just overall dishonesty. It's just part of the human project, that we just say things that will help us win the fight. And that's unfair. But in general, if you go after him and tell him, what book is that in? He won't know. So who's the author of that book? How trustworthy is this author? He won't know. Don't be that guy, but be aware of that guy. Umar ibn al-Khattab used to say this. لَسْتُ بِالْخِبْ وَالْخِبُّ يَخْدَعُنِي. I'm not a trickster, but a trickster will not trick me. Like, I've been around the block. I understand how things work. I'm not naive. Don't be naive. The people that quote science are quoting someone who quoted someone who could be very manipulative in their science. I'll give you two quick examples just so I can get into the actual proofs. We're all this is an intro to say that science isn't the only proof and isn't as reliable and shouldn't be overly depended on. One example is fat. There have been, this was published I think in 2015, the Harvard Business Journal published basically a big discovery. That big discovery is there has been so much research on fat in the past 50 years or so, okay? Scientists have been doing research on fat and the dangers of fat on our health and heart disease this and cholesterol that and all of this, right? This research gets published, and based on these facts, these scientific facts, this research, laws are passed and regulations are made on how much fat and all that, right? Harvard, in this story, basically said, we realized, we've learned, it has become clear now, that the ones who opened these research institutes, who funded these think tanks, that published this stuff on fat, which made these laws based on this research, all of this was done by who? By the sugar industry. And especially the soda industry. And these facts are not wrong, by the way. Fat is no good for you. But it was an overemphasis. It was saturating the conversation on fat so people wouldn't be discussing what? Sugar. Which now we're beginning to learn, and that's why everyone's talking about no sugar this, right? Now we're beginning to realize that sugar could be far more dangerous, processed sugars could be far more dangerous than fat ever was. See the problem with science? Not as objective as we think. Right? Many times you will hear in biology class, for example, that human beings came from a common ancestor as the chimpanzee, and there's proof for this. The proof is that there's a 99% match between the human DNA and the monkey's DNA, right? You hear this number a lot, the 99%. It might be a true fact, but half-truth, a deceitful truth. They will not tell you that we have not fully mapped the DNA of the human being yet. And actually, this experiment that everyone keeps parroting about there being a 99% match was only done, according to some, on 2% of the genome. Which means that even if these facts are true, that means that 2% of the DNA between humans and monkeys matches 99% of the time. That's a very different story than the one we're hearing in class, isn't it? So the idea that science is just totally honest and totally fair, and science is not a person, to be honest and fair. Human beings perform science, and all of us have agendas. Okay? So just take all of that with a grain of salt. Science is not proof in the sense that it's not an absolute proof. It's not the only proof. It is not a perfectly fair proof. And even if it were all of that, it would be just for the physical world, the seen world, not the metaphysical world, not the unseen world, the ghaibi world. Everyone's good? Anybody passed out yet? Good. I have 9 minutes to keep my promise. I don't know how I'm going to do that. But look, the Quran and Sunnah, when you read them carefully, there's a few things. The first thing I want to tell you is, because I don't have time to discuss all the proofs, because they're endless and they're unnecessary sometimes. Sometimes unnecessary. Does the Quran and Sunnah ever talk about atheism? No, it doesn't. Hardly ever. Arguably never. Do you know why? Like, think about it. Allah Azza wa Jal knew that at the end of time, atheism would be so prevalent. Because there's no such thing as a true atheist. Atheists are people being dishonest with themselves or dishonest with others, and their ability to be aware of their own dishonesty is a separate subject. Like, you can lie to yourself enough times that you actually start believing yourself. That's a different issue, right? We're not going to talk about the psychology of that. But there's no such thing as a real atheist. Deep down inside, everyone knows you didn't just come out of nowhere. You had an origin. There's a greater power that placed us here. We all know this. You are incapable of disbelieving in the existence of Allah. You may not know His name is Allah, but you are incapable. You know it deep down inside. You have a sense inside you that tells you this, and you're sure about it. Same way you're sure you're hungry. You don't ask for proof, right? You're sure you're angry. You're sure you like something. You're sure you dislike something. That inner sense, how do you explain that scientifically, and how do you explain that logically? It's an inner sense. Same way you have outer senses, the 5 senses, you have an inner sense as well, right? You know by your inner sense because Allah put it inside you. It's like inborn knowledge. You know what love is. You know these things. You know by necessity that you have a God. You have a creator. You have an originator. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islam teaches us how to understand that. It's called the fitrah. Fitrah is your natural state. Your natural state is that you recognize a God. The Quran and Sunnah come with so many reminders to trigger you into remembering what you already know deep down inside. That is the greatest proof, by the way. Fitrah. Why do I say it's the greatest proof? Because you're going to have to trust something. If you want to call it the gut feeling, right? You're going to have to trust something. Because even if I give you all the proof in the world, the rational proofs and logical proofs and the cosmological argument and the ontological argument and teleological, that all the people that talk about God existing, how do I know that I am not right now inside the video game of an alien and I don't really exist, and the alien is pressing buttons to make me think that makes sense? How do I know I exist? How do I know I'm not dreaming? Right? So you have nothing but a gut feeling, really, that you exist. There's no proof for it. How do I prove my existence? Right? And so Allah Azza wa Jal sends you reason and calls you sends you revelation and calls you to reason, the reason He gave you, for all of these things together, your inner sense, your fitrah, and the revelation, all of the proofs of revelation, like logically, how could this be? Where does this come from? How do I explain this? How does a man, alayhi salatu wassalam, in the 7th century Arabia, in the middle of the desert, that could not read or write, even if he could read and write, even if he collaborated using, I don't know, Wi-Fi, with every human being on earth at the time, produce a system that still applies and is still effective and is still beneficial to people in 2019? Explain that to me. Right or wrong? How does it make any sort of sense? You would have to dismiss your intellect to accept this, that this is something, just no big deal, just coincidence. You must not know him. You must not know his message. You must not know his book, which is part of the problem that we spoke about in the beginning. But once you actually give yourself a chance to unlearn the wrong things that you were conditioned on that we spoke about, and to learn the things that you never had a chance to learn, it becomes as clear as day. And then the issue of reason. Also, just plain logic, simple logic, straightforward logic. What came out of nothing? What created itself? What control do we have over anything? What caused all of this order? This order? Then all of the logic will come. But you have to trust something, or else there's no point in thinking. There's no point in investigating. Because how do I know I'm actually investigating? I could not exist. I could be dreaming. The science could all be a hallucination, right? All of this. And so once you have this fitrah, I only have 2-3 minutes left. Once you have this fitrah, which everyone has deep down inside, sometimes we try to bury it, right? We tell ourselves a lie, but Allah Azza wa Jal, from His mercy, continues to give all of us opportunities to see through the lie that we tell ourselves or other people tell us. Many a times when Allah sends us like a moment of brokenness, a moment of desperation in our life, things come crashing down, you start being a little bit more honest with these are windows, these are all opportunities to regain access to our fitrah, which is so powerful. And then all of other proofs can come later. I mean, if you tell me the proof of causality, right, what caused what, everything has a cause. Everything you know has a cause. And so this can't go on forever, because then nothing would exist. It would have to start somewhere, right? And so there has to be an uncaused cause. There has to be a first without a cause, a first without a beginning, something that's not dependent on anything. This is Al-Hayyul Qayyum, subhanahu wa ta'ala. The eternal, right? No beginning. Al-Qayyum, the sustainer of everything else, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Makes perfect sense. The argument they call of intelligent design. Like if Sheikh Dr. Umar Abdul Aziz, Hafidahullah, he said this example to me, and I always repeat it to people. If I told you that I smashed this ink pot, let's imagine it's an ink pot, on the ground and it wrote your name, would you believe me if I told you that? You would say no. What if I told you it wrote a sentence? You'd think I'm crazy. What if I told you it wrote a whole book, your life story, a biography, by throwing it on the ground? You'd say, like, put him in an institute somewhere, right? A mental hospital. What if I told you it designed the encyclopedias of the world just out of a smash? You think this is like, a joke. Well, the encyclopedias of the world, with all of their content, accuracy, and all this stuff, are not as complicated as a grain of sand. So how can you, where do you get this double standard from? Who created the leaf? Who created the cow that makes out of the leaf milk, and the worm that creates out of the leaf silk, and all of these different things, right? Endless proofs. Endless proofs. The proofs for Allah's existence and Allah's agency, His active involvement in our world, subhanahu wa ta'ala, is as numerous as the creation of this world. Every object in the creation testifies to Him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? It's about honesty. At the end of the day, if you are struggling to find proofs and you're wondering how to make sense of this whole atheism issue, we tell you to slow down, be humble, be sincere. Allah will not let you go. There's really no reason to leave Islam and become atheist just in case. There is no just in case. If atheism is true and you accidentally stayed Muslim till the day you die, you haven't lost anything, right? Screen got turned off and khalas, right? What's the rush? But on the opposite end, by the way, if you rush to a decision this dangerous, right? And then it turns out you're wrong, you have everything to lose. And statistically speaking, a person has a higher quality of life if they believe in a religion. So let us assume for the moment, may Allah forbid, for the moment, as a stepping stone, that religion is made up. Telling yourself this religion is true, even if it's made up, would still be in your best interest, right? So what's the rush? And statistically speaking, people are more likely to be family-oriented, put up with the drama of family, and more likely to be responsive to charity causes. So you're good for yourself, and you're good for others when you believe in a religion. So what's the rush? You don't want to better your time here while you're here? And who knows? You might find a reason to stay, a better reason than everything that exists here in this world. And so take it easy, relax, don't rush into something crazy. And may Allah Azza wa Jal protect us and you and our youth and our elders from whatever would cause us to be flimsy in our faith or doubtful in our faith, and help us solidify that faith and that conviction that we can meet Him with, subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah grant us the good of this world through our faith and the good of the next world through our faith, and protect us from the punishment of the fire. Allahumma ameen. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa baraka nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I went a minute over, I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Fiik barak, Allah izzak Sheikh. Ahsan Allahu ilaykum. Are there any questions? Aside from what is for dinner? What? Chinese? That question has been answered by the experts. Tfaddal.
Why is atheism so common nowadays? Is there like a
What time did you come in here? What time did you arrive? Be honest. Alhamdulillah. Because if you were here from the beginning and you asked this question, I would have admitted myself into a mental hospital. Because I thought I was giving a lecture that spent the first 10 minutes explaining that. No problem. I'm just reassuring myself. My own self-esteem was on the edge right there. So we mentioned that aside from the sources and where we get this from, it's a combination of emotional and intellectual reasons why it's so appealing, right? For Muslim youth in particular was the focus of the study today. It's convenient to escape the hot seat, the societal pressure of being Muslim in 2019, right? Not just that you believe in the unseen, but you believe in an unseen world that revealed a book that told you to be a terrorist. That's a lot of stuff to defend at once, right? So the idea of Islam having such a bad rap on so many fronts in light of the puts people on their heels. And then when there is this widespread assumption that this is the official position of the scientific community, this is substantiated by heavy science, and that this is the position of all top-notch thinkers, it is the position of the logical logicians, the philosophers, all that together makes you say, man, how can I be silly enough to put myself through that for something that's so indefensible intellectually? Get it? That's how it happens. Yes, sir.
you mentioned the fitra. Is it only for is the fitra only reserved for monotheistic people, or like could the fitra be for polytheistic?
Excellent religion. Excellent question. The fitra, what is the fitra? The fitra is a recognition of the Creator. It is not Islam. It is a point of readiness so that when the message of Islam comes to you, it synergizes with your fitrah and connects you with Allah Azza wa Jal. Okay? It's like your outlet. It's ready. It's asking for it. Only Islam fits. And Islam fits so perfectly, so easily. And that is why I said, by the way, that proof is not necessary all the time. Because it's already there by the fitrah. Some people don't need all the other stuff. And that's why when you come at them with the other stuff, like the logical listen, it's like, listen, bro, just go away. I don't understand what you're saying. I don't care. If you want to logically explain to me that God doesn't exist, I find that illogical on its own, right? God will not give me a mind and ask of me to believe something that is counter to what I believe in my gut and believe aligns with that mind He gave me. That's the idea. They're just so alien to human nature. Can it be buried? Can it be covered? Can it be contaminated in the wrong environment, like by cultural conditioning? Absolutely. But the fitrah is recognition of the Creator. Some will say there is a hereafter by the fitrah, like it can be recognized simply by the fitrah before revelation comes. This is controversial among the scholars. But recognition of God. They would say some basic qualities, like His oneness, His highness, some will add, Uh, huh? By fitra. Because they'll say, for example, if you're born on an island and you're stuck, you'll look up. Right? Like, please. Right? So certain qualities. His wisdom. Right? His knowledge. These sorts of things. Yes, sir. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Okay. Jazakallah khair for the question. First, I just want to clarify something. When we say Islam is 1400 years old, we mean the final iteration of Islam, meaning the final, most updated teachings that Allah wanted the world to live by until the end of time that were brought to us through the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We don't mean that Islam was not around in the time of Ibrahim alayhi salam, ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما. He was a Muslim, right? We don't, and then rewind all the way back. I'm not going to itemize the examples. Adam alayhi salam was the first man. He was Muslim, and so the default in humanity was tawheed, by virtue of the fitrah being present in Adam alayhi salam, and it will exist in all of his offspring. And by virtue of the fact that Allah sent revelation to Adam alayhi salam and subsequently to the prophets after him. Everyone's good on this. It's very important. Now, listen to this hadith. In Sahih Muslim, Iyad ibn Himar al-Mujashi'i radiallahu anhu said that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that Allah has said, this is an authentic hadith Qudsi, إِنِّي خَلَقْتُ عِبَادِي حُنَفَاءَ كُلَّهُم. I created all of my slaves as hunafa, plural of hanif. Hanif means what? Inclined to Allah. That's what it means, inclined. The original disposition is an inclination to Allah. فَأَتَتْهُمُ الشَّيَاطِينُ فَاجْتَلَتْهُمْ عَنْ دِينِهِمْ. Then the devils came to them and uplifted them, hijacked them from their religion. Okay? And so the human story is the story of the tug-of-war between Tawheed and Shirk. Allah created human beings, every single one of them gets born. Allah never created a mushrik, originally a mushrik. Created, born, originally, hunafa, hanif, inclined to Allah. That's the fitrah. Okay? Then things can come which hijack them. So, I'm not going to be able to go through Rome and then India and China, but let me use Russia because it's a recent, easy example. Very recently, Russia, the predominant belief was what? Tonight's discussion, atheism. The communist regime promoted atheism, right? Good. So they were conditioned against their fitrah. Okay? The work was put in to bury that fitrah. One generation after communism, they're born. The next generation, they all believe in God again. 85 to 90, 91% of Russia and Poland, one generation after communism, all believe in God again. Why? Because the original disposition, the reset button, the original disposition is Tawheed. Okay? So every person is born upon Tawheed, in the sense that they recognize, they're inclined to the one true God, and then for, like scholars go into great lengths on the 6 or 7 hijackers of fitrah. But the strongest of those hijackers, what I mentioned today lecture, social conditioning. Human beings, it's in their nature to want to belong. And so they will let themselves be impressed on, influenced by their environment just so they'll fit in. They want to blend with their environment. So if your environment is espousing a certain thing, even if it's unnatural, you're just going to do it. And the examples of this are endless, right? Why would you pierce your body that way? It's because all the girls are doing it, right? Why are you getting that? Just, I don't know. I remember one time, junior high school. I don't know. Never mind. A good friend of mine, Richard Martin, was on the basketball team with us. When the do-rags came out, you guys remember the do-rags? They're making a comeback apparently. Pray for them. I'm joking. He said that's the stupidest thing on the world. And he hated it. He said, this is so ugly. Within 1 week, he was wearing it. It's just the nature because wait, you're doing it. Okay, not that bad, all right? I think I kind of like it. It actually gives me waves, right? Like it works on my hair pretty well, and we just figure out a way to convince ourselves that that's not so crazy, because the whole world can't be crazy, right? I'm not gonna stand in front of the world. So that's the idea. Social conditioning is the biggest reason why. Temptations are another reason. So many reasons, right? But social conditioning, the herd effect, groupthink, all that stuff, that's the biggest reason why people may disregard, ignore the call of their fitrah. But they cannot kill their fitrah. That is why you can remove the dust. This is why you can help people revive in them that fitrah, to know, to remember what they know deep down inside. I hope that helps a little bit. Does it? We're still friends? Yeah, yeah. No, but this has nothing to do with the fitrah. Because the fitrah is a component of the human experience, right? The human experience has many components that are working at the exact same time. Human nature also has its weaknesses. Human nature also has its impatience. The same way Allah created a fitrah on the human being, He created the human being ajulan, hasty. He created the human being, right? Didn't He? And so all of those work together, and that does not necessarily mean that there will be more people that get past their demons, get past their Achilles heel, get past their human natures, and believe in the one true God. It doesn't mean that. Don't we know that more people will enter Jahannam than Jannah? Right? Am I making sense or no? So it doesn't necessitate that. And who said that the people of Rome, all of them, or the people of America, all of them, or the people of, what was the example you gave? India, all of them, received the message in a way that would, number one, revive their fitrah, and number two, as a result of that, hold them liable in front of Allah. Because if the message didn't get to you, then you're not liable. You're not liable in Islam, according to the correct position, simply by virtue of your fitrah. It's when the message comes that matches your fitrah and you reject it, then you're liable in front of Allah. That's also important. Because some people can't get this past the fact that why is the majority not on this? Because you're saying, how is it fair? Right? God didn't make them, put them in a state where they can get a fair chance. Who said? Who said that they will be punished for not receiving the message? This is something very debatable, right? Let me just give a chance to everyone else, then we can continue it over Chinese food. Inshallah. Sisters, do you have any questions? Sorry for yelling. Where are the sisters? Are they like here or there? Where are the sisters? How do they send their questions up? How do they send their questions? Do they send their questions? Yeah, they should have a mic. Yeah? Should definitely get them an opportunity if possible, guys. Until then, brothers, go.
Sheikh, my question is lost their faith due to some kind of calamity or the claim of existence of evil.
Yeah.
Saying that, if God gave us, also to complicate that, saying that if God gave us logic, then logically, why am I not able to understand? If someone gives an argument that, there's a world of the unseen that we don't understand, we just have to trust that.
Okay, excellent question. Jazakallah khairan. The number one reason given by atheists, my lecture was particularly geared towards Muslims who become atheists. That's why I channeled it a certain way. By and large, the number one reason atheists give for being atheists, statistically speaking, is the problem of evil. Why is there human suffering? Or suffering at all? Why is there evil in the world? Right? And how do I answer this in a short period of time? Anthony Flew was a notorious atheist for 50 years. Okay? He was an atheist for 50 years. He came back to the fold of theism, at least, right? Of believing in a God after 50 years of atheism. It took him 50 years to realize, this is what he's saying, he wrote a book about this after returning to believing in God, that the problem of evil has nothing to do with the existence of God. Okay? Meaning what? The way people assume it disproves the existence of God, evil disproves the existence of God, is the following. Does God know that there's evil? Believers say yes. Is God able to remove evil? Believers say yes. Is God merciful? Believers say yes. So he knows and he's merciful and he can stop it, but he doesn't? Makes no sense. He must not be there. That's the way they... But the problem is you guys only stopped at 3 of God's qualities. Right? We believe... Hold on. I'll come back to that point. Anthony Flew said, I realized that these are 2 completely separate subjects. Problem of evil and God's existence. Why can't, just for argument's sake, why can't God exist and just be cruel? Right? Isn't it possible for a God to exist and just be cruel? What is logically impossible about that? Right? That's not the God, obviously, we're talking about in Islam or in Christianity or in Judaism, right? But the idea is it's possible. Is it possible that God exists and there's evil and we simply can't understand it? Is that logically possible? It's logically possible. Therefore, existence of evil does not necessitate absence of God. Those are separate subjects because there's so many possibilities that the necessity is broken. Now, how do we Muslims say this or explain this? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows the evil is existing, right? And he is certainly merciful, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he can remove it. Then why doesn't he remove it? He is also the most just, right? We say that. That's why there's a hereafter, among other things. He is also the most wise. It would make no sense to create a world as a test and then give you all the answers to the test in the test, right? It would make no sense to give you free will but only allow you to use it in good things. How is that free? So atheists are basically saying we want a God that makes everything nice, but at the same time he gives us the free will, but not enough free will to commit evil. So are you really committing good if all you can commit is good? What is your worth then? And what is the worth of this world? And what is the function of this world? What is the wisdom for which this world was created? This is the issue. So Allah Azza wa Jal created us for a wisdom. And he created this dunya as a perfect world, perfectly suitable to serve the function for which he created this world. Got it? And there is another world that will make whatever happens in this world make sense. And then Allah, out of mercy for us, explained to us so many wisdoms for evil existing in general to help us trust him, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to help us understand him on some level, subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that when we encounter evil in our personal lives, we can just be reassured that it's probably in more than one of these categories. Probably to expiate my sins, probably to break my arrogance. It is probably due to something or another, right? So many examples. Does Allah Azza wa Jal not tell us the benefits of some evils existing? When Allah Azza wa Jal says, subhanahu wa ta'ala, the story of Khadr alayhi salam and Musa alayhi salam, right? You look at it from a distance, like, whoa, this guy ripped open the hull of a ship and killed a kid and, didn't felt it was wrong to take payment for hard labor. Makes no sense. Yeah, but there's another side of the story. There's a bigger picture. So these facts humble us. These facts remind us that we just can't see things. We're just like an ant on the carpet. We can't see the masterpiece that is the grander scheme of things, that is with Allah Azza wa Jal. So everything I said, remember, world is perfect because there's ultimate good coming out of all of it. There is a hereafter, so nothing in this world will go unnoticed or unrewarded or unpunished. And we know a whole bunch of wisdoms of why evil exists in the Quran and the Sunnah, so that we can rest assured through these general depictions that the specific evils that we can't find a specific wisdom for sure there's a wisdom for, but how could life be a test if I knew every last individual specific wisdom? Is that okay? Thank you. How many questions should I take? When should I stop? I have nothing to do. I have a flight at 8 o'clock. I got nothing to do from now till 8 o'clock in the morning. The food is ready? طب خلاص, we don't want anyone to burn their tongue, so we're going to take 2 more questions, inshallah. So go ahead, akhi.
So what's the one practical solution at least we can start? Because I've seen in masajid, like you said, just come, they say pray, they don't even know the meaning of Fatiha. Even at home, parents are not really that engaged in it. So what's the one thing at least we can start?
To be honest, there's so many things, and everyone should work in their niche. Because again, there's people that need to do, astaghfirullah, it sounds horrible. I don't want to say what I'm doing. But the idea of awareness to help people, that's very important. We shouldn't underestimate that. We should be doing this in every masjid over and over and over again. You need, should I say, an army of people to do that. Yes? But believe it or not, that is not as effective as the communal component. More people follow religion, whatever religion they're following, because of association than they do because of persuasion. Like you being smiley to the person that walks through that door, right? Making them feel a sense of ownership in the masjid, a sense of belonging in the masjid, remembering their name, whatever it may be. This could keep them here more than 10, 20, 100 lectures sometimes. Okay? So that's very important, to a vibrant sense of community, belonging, brotherhood, fraternity. People are looking for that. The word ins, human being, comes from the word uns, which means uns means like companionship. Our nature is that we want to connect with human beings. We have to provide that social sphere for people. That's one thing I would say. Every masjid needs to buff up their welcoming committee. That every single one of us needs to feel personally responsible to welcome the newcomer, to learn the names of the people that have been here forever and you still don't know their names, right? All of these things. You don't just want to come here and feel like you're back home, Where is my Arab newspaper? Where is my Pakistani newspaper? I want to feel that sense of grandma's village again. This is just, everyone wants to just come here and feel a sense of nostalgia, their own little corner. It's very dangerous. Because you're here and you see a lot of people here and it makes you feel good, but you don't realize what doing that, being so self-centered, could cause of people to walk out of these masajid and never come back. 23% of these first-generation immigrants that I'm talking about no longer call themselves Muslim. They say, I am not Muslim. That's 1 out of every 4. We need to realize that. We need to realize that there's 3 to 4 million Muslims in America, and there's only 2,500 masajid in America, which means there's 1,600 Muslims for every masjid, which means, and most masajid can't hold 1,000 people, or 500 people, or 400 people, which means most Muslims never come into the masjid, not even on Eid. It's a huge challenge. We all have to enlist in recruiting people back to Allah's path. However you do that, but it's between you and your ambitions with Allah Azza wa Jal, your skill sets, your capacities, your potentials. May Allah help us all. One more question and we're closing. تفضل Sheikh. وصدقت وصدقت بكلمات ربها وكتبه وكانت من القانتين. Mm.
Why he didn't say min al-qanitat? She's a female. Is that because of the little for Maryam to Allah or different reason? And one more thing. Kuli washrabi wa qarri ayna. What does that mean, qarri ayna?
Okay, second one is easier than the first one. Allah Azza wa Jalla says to Maryam alayhi salam, Kuli, eat, this is after she gave birth, washrabi, and drink, وقري عينا. القر من القرار والاستقرار. قري عينا, it's an expression the Arabs know that means let your eye be still. What does your eye be still mean? When you're uneasy, when you feel insecure, you're looking for security. But when you find what you're looking for, you stop looking, right? So the stillness of the eye means relaxation, means comfort. That's why they translate it sometimes as the comfort of my eye. Because you're comfortable where you are, so you're not still apprehensive, searching, right? So that's what qarri ayna means. Just means relax, means be comfortable, relax, don't worry, be reassured, basically. The first question is, why did Allah Azza wa Jal say that Maryam alayhi salam was kanat min al-qanitin, was of the qanitin, not of the qanitat? And perhaps the most obvious, so qanitin is those that have been devout. Qanitat is those women that have been devout. So the difference is qanitin applies to men and women. It is masculine, but it's also unisex. In the sense that in Arabic, like in Spanish, like in so many languages, when there's a mix of men and women, the male pronoun becomes dominant. That's what's used, right? Am I making sense? Basically قانتين تشمل الرجال والنساء فكانت من القانتين أي حتى لو قارناها بالرجال كانت من أعلى الناس رجالا ونساء قنوتا لله عز وجل. You understand, right? Make sense? Okay, good. قانتين means she was among those, not just those women, those in general that were truly devout, meaning even if you compared her with men, she was among, whether we're talking about men or women, of the highest echelon of devotedness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, regardless of who you compare her to. May Allah Azza wa Jalla be pleased with Maryam. Go away. Go to food. Enjoy your dinner, everybody. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. السلام حفظك الله. الله يبارك فيك. Good to see you, Sheikh. بارك الله فيك. جزاك الله خيرا. السلام عليكم.
Recently, the peppered moth. You heard about the peppered moth, the black moth, the white moth. There was this, they teach in the books, biology books, evolution, that these moths, black moths during the industrial age, there was a lot of smoke. So the black moths were less susceptible to attacks by predators than the white moths. But they found out that this guy was gluing the black moth on the lips. Basically, he's making his research. That's a good example. I'll add it to my. Do you remember the thing?